In the near future, society is governed by eugenics, and most people are meticulously engineered in laboratories. Everyone's genetic information is stored in a vast database, and those created in labs are classified as valids, while those conceived naturally are labeled invalids due to their higher susceptibility to genetic flaws, ranging from serious illnesses to something as minor as baldness. Although genetic discrimination is technically against the law, employers often conduct urine tests or analyze the saliva on a resume envelope, leading to genotype profiling that leaves invalids stuck in menial jobs. At his apartment, Vincent meticulously prepares himself for the day. He spends considerable time shaving and scrubbing his body until every trace of dead skin is removed, then burns any loose hairs and skin cells that might have fallen. He takes a urine bag from the fridge and carefully attaches it to his groin to pass off the sample as his own. He also applies a small amount of blood inside a fake fingertip, which he attaches over his real finger with precision. Vincent heads to work at Gattaca Aerospace Corporation, where every employee must undergo a blood identity check to enter. Vincent lets the machine draw blood from his fake fingertip, passing the test as usual. He then settles at his desk, working on spaceflight plans on his computer. Periodically, he uses a small device to ensure no DNA traces remain on his keyboard. The mission director stops by to commend Vincent on his meticulous cleanliness and confirms that Vincent has been selected for the upcoming mission to Titan, Saturn's moon, in a week. After the director leaves, Vincent discreetly opens a jar and spreads some skin, hair, and nail clippings around his workstation, then places a hair on the comb he keeps in his desk drawer. Later, Vincent undergoes a substance test to ensure he's clean before the mission. Using the hidden urine bag, he provides a sample, and when the doctor checks it, the machine confirms that he is Jerome, a valid. After work, Vincent watches another spacecraft launch, as he does every day. His co-worker Irene approaches to congratulate him on his upcoming mission, noting that he's the only employee who watches every launch without fail. This triggers a flashback to Vincent's early life. Vincent was born naturally after his parents had an unplanned encounter on the beach. From the moment he was born, the doctors took a blood sample and determined that he had a high likelihood of developing numerous conditions, predicting a life expectancy of just 30 years. Vincent's childhood was challenging, as his mother treated even minor ailments like a runny nose or a small scratch as life-threatening due to his poor genetic profile. No school would accept Vincent as a student because insurance companies wouldn't cover his defective genes. Eventually, Vincent's parents decided to have a second child, this time opting for a genetic laboratory to ensure the best possible outcome. His brother Anton was born without any genetic flaws and enjoyed the favoritism of their parents, although he and Vincent were close. The brothers often played a game called Chicken in the Sea, competing to see who could swim the farthest from shore before turning back. Anton always won, exacerbating Vincent's feelings of inadequacy. Despite his genetic limitations, Vincent dreamed of becoming an astronaut. However, his parents warned him that his genes would prevent him from ever being hired, and they were proven right when Vincent was repeatedly rejected at job interviews. One day, during another swim, Vincent shocked Anton by winning the competition for the first time. In fact, Vincent had to rescue a fatigued Anton and help him back to shore. That was the last time the brothers swam together, as Vincent left home that evening to chase his dreams. Vincent eventually secured a job at Gattaca as a janitor. While cleaning the offices, he would sometimes use the computers to learn about space and admire the daily launches. He also observed the blood prick identity check that occurred at the same finger each day and managed to steal a small sensor that fell from a machine. Despite being mocked by the head janitor for his ambitions, Vincent never stopped dreaming. He tirelessly exercised in his apartment, pushing his body to the limit, hoping for a chance to prove himself. Desperate to advance, Vincent contacted a man in the black market who introduced him to the real Jerome, a former swimming champion with an impressive IQ and perfect health, except for his legs, which were paralyzed after a car accident. The incident occurred overseas and went unrecorded, so no one knew that Jerome had become an invalid. Vincent paid both men to acquire Jerome's identity, initiating a long and painful transformation process. Vincent got contact lenses to replace his glasses and match Jerome's eye color. He also hurt himself and styled his hair to resemble Jerome's. ID photos were not a concern, as society relied entirely on DNA for identification. The final hurdle was height. Jerome was taller than Vincent, So Vincent underwent a grueling procedure that involved breaking his legs and extending them to match Jerome's height. Vincent moved into Jerome's apartment to use his address as well. During his recovery from the leg procedure, Vincent practiced writing with his non-dominant hand to replicate Jerome's signature, while Jerome continued to supply him with blood and urine samples. One day, Jerome showed Vincent his silver medal as a reminder of the high expectations placed on him. Jerome also encouraged Vincent to call him by his middle name, Eugene, to help Vincent adjust to being called Jerome. Vincent's transformation was complete, and he successfully assumed Jerome's identity, allowing him to pursue his dreams of space travel at Gattaca Aerospace Corporation. The challenges he faced in maintaining this facade were immense, but Vincent was determined to overcome them and reach for the stars. When the day of Vincent's final interview arrived, he carefully selected a urine bag and tested it on his home machine, only to receive an error message. The urine contained traces of alcohol. Furious, Vincent confronted Jerome about the consequences of his drinking, knowing that any mistake could cost him his dream. After testing several more bags, Vincent found the last one clean and took it with him, hoping for the best. At Gattaca, the doctor conducted the routine test, and the machine confirmed that Vincent was indeed Jerome, classifying him as a valid. There was no need for an actual interview. Vincent was hired on the spot, purely for his genetic profile and intelligence. From that point on, Vincent's daily routine became a rigorous process. He scrubbed his body meticulously every morning, removing any loose skin, nails, and hair, which he then incinerated to eliminate any trace of his true identity. His clothes were stored in sealed bags to prevent contamination. At work, Vincent would discreetly distribute Jerome's DNA samples around his desk to maintain the illusion of his identity. The fake fingertip with Jerome's blood ensured that he passed the identity checks at the door without raising suspicion. No one ever questioned him. In the present day, chaos erupts at Gattaca when the company administrator is found unalived with a keyboard. Jerome scratches his eye as he stares at the crime scene, unknowingly dropping an eyelash in the process. The police arrive shortly after to collect every piece of DNA evidence from the scene, including the eyelash. The mission director informs Irene that the mission is still on schedule and Vincent will still be part of the team heading to Titan. When Vincent shares the news with Jerome, they decide to go out and celebrate. They indulge in heavy drinking and even perform tricks with the smoke rising from their glasses. Meanwhile, at the office, Irene retrieves a hair from Vincent's desk drawer and takes it to a matchmaking service, where tests reveal that Vincent, or rather, Jerome, is genetically exceptional. By the end of the night, Jerome is so intoxicated that Vincent has to help him to bed. In a moment of vulnerability, Jerome confesses that he hadn't been drunk during the car accident and that it wasn't an accident at all. He had been attempting to unalive himself. The next morning, the police forensic team tests all the samples from the crime scene and discovers that a mysterious valid was present at Gattaca, making him the prime suspect. Vincent, meanwhile, places the sensor he had stolen back in his janitor days on Jerome's chest, recording 20 minutes of his pulse as Jerome vigorously wheels his chair to simulate exercise. Later, at Gattaca, Vincent is subjected to a running test and swaps out the office sensor with the one he had prepared at home. As the detectives continue their investigation, they trace the invalid DNA from the eyelash to a janitor who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. The detectives visit the office to ask questions, and Vincent overhears their conversation, causing him to become increasingly anxious. To make matters worse, the 20-minute recording ends, revealing Vincent's true pulse, which is alarmingly high. Panicked, Vincent rushes to the locker room and collapses, struggling to catch his breath. After work, Irene meets with Vincent and confesses that she accessed his genetic profile, which of course belonged to Jerome. She is awed by how perfect his genetics are and feels inadequate in comparison, revealing that she, too, is a product of genetic engineering but still carries a predisposition to heart failure, which disqualifies her from space missions. When Vincent tells her he sees nothing wrong with her, Irene gives him a lock of her hair, urging him to test it and discover her genetic flaws. However, Vincent throws it away, claiming the wind blew it from his hand. Sometime later, Vincent is at his desk when all employees receive an alert about the wanted invalid from the eyelash. Fortunately, no one recognizes him, but Vincent remains on edge. When he returns home, he confides in Jerome that he is now the prime suspect, and in a panic, begins throwing away all the blood and urine samples. Jerome stops him, reminding Vincent that no one would ever look at him and see an invalid. Determined not to arouse suspicion, Vincent decides to maintain his routine and go out for the evening. Jerome watches from the window as Irene arrives to pick Vincent up. The two attend a piano concert for their first date, and during the performance, the pianist tosses his glove into the audience, revealing that he has 12 fingers. Irene explains that only someone with such a unique physical trait could play such a complex piece. Meanwhile, the detectives are conducting a sweep of the neighborhood, rounding up invalids in a desperate search for the life-taker. When they reach Jerome's apartment, they administer a blood test. The detective is surprised that a wheelchair-bound man could be working at Gattaca, prompting Jerome to feign outrage, accusing the detective of discrimination and claiming he was injured during training. Not wanting to cause trouble, the detective leaves. At Gattaca, officers collect all the trash bags from the office. On their way home, Irene and Vincent encounter a roadblock, where the police are inspecting everyone in the area. Vincent quickly removes his contact lenses and avoids a saliva test by claiming he's been drinking. Instead, the officers take a blood sample, but his fake fingertip fools the machine once again. After passing the checkpoint, Irene tells Vincent she wants to show him something special. She leads him across a busy street, dodging cars with ease, but Vincent hesitates, unable to see clearly without his contacts. After a moment of doubt, he runs across and narrowly avoids getting hit. Irene then takes him to a solar panel center to watch the sunrise, creating a stunning light display that Vincent sees as a blur. As they leave, Irene notices something different about Vincent's eyes, but he brushes it off as a trick of the light. Back at Gattaca, the detectives discover that a cup from the office trash has the same DNA as the eyelash. They begin to suspect that the invalid may be working undercover at Gattaca and killed the administrator to protect his secret. To confirm their theory, they announce they will be taking blood samples directly from the vein instead of just from fingertips. When Vincent's turn for the blood test comes, he quickly acts as if the doctor has pricked him too hard with the needle and jumps out of the seat. In the commotion, he manages to swap his blood sample with Jerome's, narrowly avoiding detection. The detectives rerun the tests, but once again, no match is found. That night, Vincent and Irene go on a second date, enjoying a romantic dance together. Their peaceful evening is abruptly interrupted when the police arrive, collecting DNA evidence from items like napkins and cigarette butts. When the officers insist on testing people directly, Vincent realizes they're closing in on him and quickly drags Irene out the back door. As they make their escape through dark alleys, a cop tries to stop them, but Vincent knocks him out cold. Irene is shocked and frightened, calling him insane, but Vincent urges her to keep moving. When the other cops discover their unconscious partner, they start searching the area. Hiding in an alley, Vincent silences Irene's questions about who Vincent is with a kiss. Later that night, the two find themselves at Irene's apartment, where they share an intimate moment. The next morning, Vincent wakes up to find a stray hair on the pillow and panics. He rushes to the beach, using sand and rocks to scrub any excess skin from his body to ensure he leaves no trace behind. When he returns, Irene notices the scars on his legs, and Vincent lies, saying they are from a car accident. Meanwhile, the detectives continue comparing Jerome's profile to Vincent's, deciding they need more tests. They return to Gattaca and discreetly take the keys from Vincent's keyboard while asking about him, still referring to him as Jerome. Overhearing this, Irene quickly warns Vincent, telling him in code that he looks unwell and should go home. Understanding the message, Vincent leaves the building while Irene informs the detective that Jerome, Vincent, went home due to illness. The detective, undeterred, insists that Irene take him to Jerome's home. At the same time, Vincent calls Jerome, advising him to be himself because the police are on their way. Jerome painfully drags himself out of his wheelchair and up the stairs to the main floor, barely making it to the buzzer in time to let Irene and the detective in. He then struggles to position himself naturally in the chair, adjusting his legs to look convincing. When the detective and Irene enter, Jerome plays the part, even asking Irene for a kiss to maintain the ruse, which she reluctantly gives. The detective takes a blood sample and, frustrated, confirms it's indeed Jerome. As he prepares to head downstairs, where Vincent and the hidden lab are, the detective receives a call from his partner. They've apprehended the real life taker. Relieved, the detective leaves. Vincent emerges from hiding, and Irene, witnessing him and Jerome call each other by the same name, is hurt and confused. She rushes out, and though Vincent follows, explaining his situation and swearing he didn't unalive anyone, Irene remains wary and leaves him behind. At the police station, it's revealed that the spit found in the victim's eye matches the director's DNA, confirming that the administrator was unalived because he threatened to cancel the Titan mission, a dream the director wasn't willing to let go. Sometime later, Vincent returns to Gattaca and finds the detective waiting at his desk. The detective reveals a shocking truth: he's actually Vincent's brother, Anton. The two hadn't recognized each other during the investigation, having been apart since their teenage years, but Anton pieced the clues together. Accusing Vincent of deception and threatening to arrest him, the brothers argue. Vincent, believing Anton wants him to fail, reminds him of the last swimming race they had, where Vincent emerged victorious. Frustrated, Anton challenges him to another race. That night, the brothers head to the beach and dive into the water, swimming so far that the shore disappears from sight. As fatigue sets in, Anton warns they're pushing too far, but Vincent, driven by his relentless determination, calls him a coward. Eventually, Anton starts to tire, and Vincent finally reveals his secret: he never saves anything for the return trip. Exhausted, Anton begins to drown, and Vincent swims back to save him, dragging him to shore. A few hours later, Vincent visits Irene, offering her a strand of his hair as a gesture of trust. However, Irene throws it away, saying the wind blew it out of her hand, and they spend the night together, knowing it's a farewell before Vincent leaves on his mission to Titan. The next morning, Vincent returns to his apartment, only to find the lab covered in plastic. Jerome reveals that he's prepared enough blood and urine samples to last Vincent 2 lifetimes, implying he won't be around when Vincent returns from space. When Vincent asks where Jerome is going, Jerome cryptically replies that he's traveling too. He hands Vincent a card, instructing him not to open it until he's in space. At Gattaca, as Vincent prepares for his mission, the doctor informs him that there's been a last-minute policy change. A new urine sample is required. Vincent, unprepared, begins to pee in a cup, thinking his dream is about to be crushed. But the doctor, who has suspected the truth all along, reveals that he's been covering for Vincent because he has a son who's also an invalid and deserves better opportunities. The machine initially identifies Vincent's profile incorrectly, but the doctor manually overrides it to show Jerome's name, allowing Vincent to proceed. Before Vincent leaves, the doctor mentions that he always knew because Vincent grabs himself with the wrong hand. Back at the apartment, Jerome retrieves his silver medal and enters the incinerator, ending unaliving himself. Vincent's spacecraft departs Earth. Once Vincent is far enough from the planet, he opens Jerome's card and finds a lock of Jerome's hair inside. In a way, Jerome has now also reached space. And that wraps up the thought-provoking story of Gattaca, a film that explores the complex relationship between genetics, identity, and the human spirit. Vincent's journey reminds us that determination and resilience can defy even the most rigid systems. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more in-depth breakdowns of your favorite movies. What did you think of the film's message? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.